You might think a show about a heist during a Muhammad Ali fight is, well, all about the action.
Right.
But trust me, this deep dive is going to take us way beyond the money and the knockouts. We're taking a look at Fight Night, the $1 million heist. And let me tell you, this review we found, it really digs into some fascinating stuff.
It does. Like right off the bat, it's interesting how the reviewer picked up on Atlanta itself as a character.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
It's like the city becomes this, this living, breathing thing. You can almost feel it striving for that recognition. But at the same time, it's wrestling with its past. There's this real tension there.
And they connect that really well with the main character, right? Chicken Man.
Exactly. The reviewer, they use this phrase. Hold on, let me get it right. Here it is. A scrapper with big dreams learning to overcome his disreputable past by thinking of the wider world beyond himself.
Yeah.
And that got me thinking, that's not just Chicken Man, it's Atlanta too.
Wow, yeah. Okay, so how does all that historical context, I guess, how does that play into things?
Well, picture Atlanta in 1970. It's starting to boom, becoming this hub for Black America.
Yeah.
Progress, change, all that. But it's still got that history, the weight of it. And then to have a Muhammad Ali fight.
Okay.
Ali in the 70s. Talk about a statement.
It's not just a fight, it's a spectacle.
Exactly. It was a huge deal. For Atlanta to host that, it was like say, hey, we're here. We're a contender. Just like Chicken Man, looking for that win.
So both of them, the city and this small-time hustler, they're both kind of looking for that knockout punch that'll change everything.
Totally. And the show's clever to use that Ali fight almost like a microcosm of what Atlanta's trying to do, right? Redefine itself in the eyes of the world. Prove something.
Okay, so we've got Atlanta with this chip on its shoulder, and then you've got Chicken Man, this guy who gets roped into a heist during all this. And speaking of the heist itself, the reviewer, they definitely had some thoughts about how massive this thing gets. And the cast. Don't even get me started.
It's like they emptied out a Hollywood phone book for this thing. I mean, Kevin Hart, Samuel L. Jackson, Don Cheadle, Taraji P. Henson. It goes on and on.
I know. And that's actually something the reviewer struggled with a bit, right? Just keeping track of everybody.
Yeah. And this is what I love about diving into these reviews. It's not just too many characters. It's how that misses with the viewer. Like they specifically said they'd be lost, even with those intros, trying to remember who's who.
And isn't there a weird parallel there? I mean, with it being a heist and all?
Totally. Think about it. Heists are chaos, right? Moving parts, people double-crossing, plans going sideways. The show kind of captures that feeling, whether it meant to or not.
Too many cooks in the kitchen, maybe.
You got it. Too many moving parts, hidden agendas, and everything's kind of teetering on the edge of, well, you get the idea.
So, okay, we've got this giant cast. The heist is pure chaos. But even with all that going on, the reviewer, they still found things to like. Especially the act.
Oh, absolutely. It's like, how sometimes a movie, or in this case, a show, it just clicks because the actors are that good.
Yeah, you can have the best story in the world, but if the actors don't sell it...
It falls flat, right. But here, the reviewer was really impressed. They were blown away by Kevin Hart, actually. So it was like surprisingly dramatic, not what you'd expect.
Interesting. So we've got these powerhouse performances, but then there's the other side of it. What the reviewer said about the pacing and the structure of the whole thing, that's where things get kind of tricky, don't they?
Yeah, and this is something I think about a lot. Can great actors save a story that's, I don't know, maybe not as strong? Can they pull it off? And with Fight Night, the reviewer seems to land somewhere in the middle,
Yeah, it's that balance, right? Like, they even had this quote, and this really stood out to me. They said, "It's just as easy to imagine editors and audiences itching to get back to Samuel L. Jackson waving his gun and swearing."
Which tells you something, right? Even when you're trying to be this deep, thought-provoking show.
Sometimes you just want some good old-fashioned action.
Exactly. And that's not a bad thing. It's like, you could appreciate a good steak, but sometimes you just crave a burger and fries.
And with Fight Night, was it trying to be both? Like, did it know what it wanted to be? Was it a heist thriller with something to say, or...
Or was it trying to tackle these big social issues but got a little lost along the way?
It's a good question. The reviewer didn't necessarily slam the show for being ambitious. More like, they questioned if it all came together the way it could have.
So, like, maybe he was trying to do too much. Is that what you're saying?
It's possible, yeah. If it had zeroed in more, Instead of the giant cast, the twists, all that, what if it had really focused on Chicken Man and Atlanta?
You're saying, like, use that connection to really explore those themes. Ambition, race, how cities change,
Exactly. That could add a whole other level to it, don't you think? Instead of those ideas maybe getting a little...
buried under all the action.
Yeah. So it makes you think, right, it's not just about this one heist. It's bigger than that. Can a city really outrun its past? Or is that always going to be there, kind of lurking under the surface?
And that's what makes this review so interesting. It's not just about what's on the screen. It gets you thinking about your own life, your own city, those stories we tell ourselves about who we are, where we come from.
Like, can you ever really escape it? Or is it always going to be shaping things, even if you don't realize it?
Exactly. And it's timely.
Yeah.
Think about all the conversations happening right now about social justice, about representation, even just like what statues we put up, what we tear down.
It's all about that tension, isn't it? Trying to move forward.
But also dealing with the fact that history happened. And sometimes it's messy.
And how do you tell the difference between real change and just, putting a new coat of paint on things?
Which brings us back to Fight Night. It wants to entertain you, sure, but it also accidentally stumbles into these bigger questions about ambition, about race, about what it costs to really change.
So even if the show's not perfect, it gets you thinking about the city, about these characters, about way more than just the heist itself.
Exactly. Sometimes the things that are the most interesting, the most thought-provoking, they're not always going to be polished and perfect.
Yeah, it's like that saying, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor, right? This deep dive has been anything but smooth sailing. We've gone from a heist to the history of Atlanta to, the human condition, practically.
And we're ending on a question, aren't we? Because when we talk about a city reinventing itself, whose vision is that really? Who benefits and who gets left behind?
Something to think about the next time you're watching a city change right before your eyes. This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for exploring with us.